Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask the Arts. Today, I'm really excited to introduce you to Mary Anastasiou, and she is a multi-hyphenate, and we're going to talk about what that means. But first of all, welcome, Mary.
Hi, it's nice to finally meet you.
We were just saying before that we've never actually met in person, but I think we've both had like these parallel lives for so long now that it's just like, yeah, I know Mary.
Oh, yeah, it actually feels like it's been a bit of a parallel lives kind of thing. Yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
does. And one of the things that I've really resonated with you for the gazillion years that we've known each other is that you tend to gravitate to opportunities and you're not scared to say yes to things, and you see opportunities where other people might see roadblocks. And that's one of
Ooh,
the reasons why I actually really wanted to talk to you today, because you've had a very interesting journey to where you are now. Did you want to share kind of where you started compared to where you ended up?
I had a chat with Ken from Ring the Chance of Tacos the other day, and I just said to him that I kind of fell backwards into this industry. It wasn't like here's an opportunity, yeah. So I started the self-publishing journey, like most people, naively thinking that I could all do it on my own, and all of that kind of thing. And with a marketing and advertising background, I thought, yeah, this is a piece of cake. I'll just get an illustrator, I'll work it all out, and all of that was fine and dandy. And I did all of that, and Rockstar originally came out in 2016, first published in 2016. And I did all of those things, did the marketing, did the knocking on doors, did all of that sort of stuff, and then kind of got to a point as a self-published author where I kind of went, well, I don't know what to do with it anymore. Like, I'm kind of stuck now. What do I do now? And I sat on it. It was just one of those things. It sat for about 6 months, and then out of the blue, out of nowhere, I got a message from James Layton on LinkedIn saying, hey, I've just read this article. I've seen that you've got this book. Do you want to chat? Really interested in signing your books. And he signed me for three. It was just,
God, I didn't realize that.
he signed me for three, rock star, movie star, and sports star. There was potentially going to be a fourth, but we sort of went, yeah, sports star's the last one in that series.
When you started
Yeah,
falling back into this industry, I love that you put it that you fell backwards into this industry. That's so you.
I, I
Um,
did.
what did you see as the biggest challenge when you were just starting out?
As a self-published author, I think the biggest issue is that you don't have the same level of distribution as, a traditionally published author might have. So you're limited in terms of what you can do and how you can get your book out there. So you're limited to kind of really knocking on doors and, doing your own groundwork. And, as I've said, I used to have a box full of books in the back of my boot. And every time I came across a bookstore, I'd go and knock on the door and say, hey, would you be interested in having these on consignment? So I kind of understood that process. Um, yeah, in terms of publishing, I think because my experience is like I've been in the industry for 25 years, the marketing and advertising, and I've been a designer for 35 years or so. Um, I Because I fell backwards into it, it kind of meant that I just picked up that whole creative director role relatively easily. Um, so yeah, I haven't really had too many negatives from a publishing kind of perspective, but yeah, there was challenges as a self-published author for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people watching who have independently published and self-published will feel your pain with that. Like distribution is always going
Yeah,
to be something that it is a hurdle. But when we talk about multi-hyphenates, and I've only just recently discovered this term, and
I've
a
never heard it before.
multi-hyphenate, I know, multi-hyphenate is somebody who is doing multiple roles at the same time. So, which is you, you're doing lots of different things.
Yeah.
So, from where you started in the marketing and design to self-publishing, how did you go from there to now working for a publishing company?
Yeah, as I said, it was like one of those things. So James signed me for Rockstar, Movie Star, and Sports Star, and then he sent me the contract for, the contract for that. And on the contract was his logo. And I just looked at him and I said, "Is that your logo?" And he said, "Yeah." And I went, "No, it's not your logo. Sorry."
Of course you did. Of course you
No,
did.
yeah, part of my job is branding people. So,
Yeah.
this is the infancy of Larrikin House. And I kind of looked at him and said, you know, if you're going to do a cross section of the industry and look at what people are doing out there, you can't really go out with a logo that's not going to be strong and impactful, right? So give me an opportunity. I'll go back and I'll play with it and I'll redesign it and whatever. And I came back with the bright yellow and the smiley face, which has become synonymous for
Oh,
Larrikin now.
absolutely.
Yeah, and he then just kind of said to me, "Okay, well, if you're going to do that, then can you do my social media and can you do my marketing collateral and and can you come on board and just be the creative director and just produce all of my books?" Which is kind of, as I said, falling backwards into an industry that I had, no intention necessarily of kind of getting into, but it was the dream job. It was the serendipitous dream job. Just kind of happened, which is great.
That's amazing. And, this is talking about when you follow your passion and you do what lights you up and you do what
Yeah,
makes you happy, that the opportunities come. Like
absolutely.
they come.
Absolutely. I tell people that sometimes the universe puts you in the right place at the right time.
Right.
It's just one.
Yeah. With the right people. You
Yeah.
just need to, be open and have your eyes open and see
Yeah.
that. So what was your experience like working for a traditional publisher?
Well, as I said to you, it was kind of, we were all a little bit green, to be
Mm.
totally honest. Like James had never run a publishing company before. He had been running his educational book, the library component, for quite a long time, and had never really run a publishing company before. So we were all a little bit, all kind of came together in this really beautiful little nucleus of people that had never really kind of gone dabbled into the publishing world before, and we created this sort of really fun, engaging, gorgeous, supportive kind of energy. And it was kind of reflective of the Larrikin brand, really. And we all sort of learned along the way. So we learned about editing, and my background, obviously, as I said, is in graphic design. So I knew about all of the, publishing side and what you needed to do from an artwork perspective and production and that kind of thing. But we all kind of hit the ground running and learned about editing and learned about soliciting an illustrator and doing all of that sort of stuff, and author and illustrator care, and all of those kinds of things. So yeah, that was the best part of it. The infancy of kind of creating something out of nothing was probably the best part of Larrikin, I think.
Yeah, and Larrikin's just gone from strength to
Yeah,
strength
I
now.
have.
It's
Absolutely.
amazing. And were you still writing during this time? Were you still being creative yourself?
I didn't really have time to be creative, to be honest. It was one of those things I kind of, we were producing in the early years, we were producing close to 3 or 4 manuscripts a month. So
Oh,
yeah,
really?
yeah, yeah. So in our first year, I think we produced close to 50 titles in the first year. So we were busy. I was busy. Like I was literally doing Larrikin House, pretty much 3 or 4 days a week. So, and, I've said this before, creative for me comes in fits and starts. Like I'm not one of those people that goes, okay, on Friday, I'm just going to allocate that day and I'm going to sit and write. It's not like that. It's one of those things when inspiration strikes, it's like, okay, there's the seed. Think about it for a couple of days. If it's going to come, it'll come. If it doesn't, then, it's one of those really. So
I'm
yeah,
exactly the same. Yeah.
yeah,
I can't schedule writing time in my diary. I can't say on Tuesday between 9 and
yeah.
9:30 I'm gonna sit down. No, I can't do that.
No,
And
I can't.
my life doesn't work like that either. So I
No,
think
writing kind of works around me as opposed to
yeah.
the other way around. It's just one of those things.
And people I know so many people who feel guilty because they're like, oh, I should be writing or I should have a writing routine. Well, not really, because you should be writing what lights you up and makes you happy and writing for fun. And if you're sitting there staring at a blank screen or a blank piece of paper, that's not fun.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. I think sometimes what happens is that we get caught up in this idea of the shoulds and, all of that kind of stuff. And there's a part of me that just thinks that that creative process is an intuitive thing anyway. It's like when I sat down and I wrote Rockstar and Movie Star, I've said this before, it felt like a download. It was just like I sat, 45 minutes, these two manuscripts were there, and it was kind of boom. And it's been like that. That's my process. Like, I might not write for 6 months, 12 months, a year, whatever, but then something will inspire me, and all of a sudden I'll sit down and I might write 3 or 4 different manuscripts in the one sitting. It just, that's kind of my process. It's just, it comes from God. I'm not going to say God because I'm not religious, but it's like a download. It comes from
The
somewhere.
universe.
Yeah, yeah.
You're channeling something from the universe. I love that because I'm exactly the same. And with you, like, why kids books? Like, what was it about the kidlet space that drew you towards it?
I can't write in prose. So I've done like,
You've
like
got a short attention span like me, and you can only manage 500 words. Is that it?
pretty much. I've tried YA, I've tried middle grade, I've tried chapter books. I just can't get my head around anything. And I think in rhyme, and that's just the way it is. And having kids of your own, you have kids of your own, you start to read other people's books and you start to go, yeah, I can do this. And everyone does it, right? We all
Yeah,
do it.
we all do it.
We all do it. We all like have kids read books and then go, oh, that's easy. I could do that. And then you lull yourself into a false sense of security, thinking that yes, you absolutely can do it, and naively, fall into the lit world, and then go, okay, maybe it is a bit of a challenge. Maybe it's not as easy as I thought it was. But yeah, I write in rhyme because I just think in rhyme. It's just that way for me.
So many people tell you not to write in rhyme now, though, these days. Like, there's publishers who don't accept rhyming books, and a lot of people have, said to me, oh, you can't get published if you write in rhyme. What's your thought on that?
I'm not sure that you can't get published if you write in rhyme. The commercial aspect of what they're actually telling you is that rhyme doesn't translate well in other countries, right? So if you're going to get a licensing agreement from, France or Italy or one of those other international countries, rhyme doesn't translate as well, which means that sales opportunities are a lot more limited to a rhyming story versus a prose story. So that's kind of where they're coming from. It's not about you shouldn't write in rhyme or publishers don't accept rhyme, because I know quite a few that accept rhyme. It comes down to the commerciality of whether or not a book is going to be able, you're going to be able to sell it overseas.
And it has to be good rhyme too, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it has to be really good rhyme. I think, and I've said this before, I think when you hone your craft, you've got to get real. Rhyme is one of those things that you've got, it's not just rhyme, it's the meter as well. Like you've got to get the beat right. And it's okay to
Yeah.
have every now and then, it's okay to have like a near rhyme. But if you haven't got the beat right, and for example, between stanzas, the beat changes, it makes it really difficult for the person that's reading it to kind of find the flow. And it's difficult for kids to find the beat. So yes, rhyme is really important, but I think meter is equally important.
And story, like, every time you talk to a publisher at a writing conference, inevitably they get asked the question, what are you looking for? And most of the time it's like, oh, we'll know it when we see it.
Yeah.
Like, is there a secret formula?
Um, in terms of craft, the formula is make it punchy, make sure that you've got a really strong story arc, make sure that honed your craft, and if it's rhyme, that your rhyme is really good and that your meter is really good. But in terms of, finding the next big thing or having a theme or that kind of stuff, I think you've just got to be really creative. Like have a look at what's out in the industry and maybe think about, what could I be doing that's different? Or, if you notice that there's a particular theme, well, go shopping, go to Kmart, go to Big W, have a look at what's out there, right? And have a look at what buyers are buying and have a look at whether there's an opportunity for you to do, I don't know, let's say a unicorn book, but with a twist, or, a dragon book or a fairy book, or, those kinds of themes are, classics that are perennial essentially. But you just have to think about being creative, think about what you can do to kind of be a little bit different. Like, I've talked about my books before, but people have written books about snakes before, but the angle that Julius
Mm.
is the angle of, I got inspired by seeing little kids who kind of hug each other and they hug so tight that you can't quite work out, like, hey, you're going to hurt each other. And, as a Python story about a snake who squeezes too tight was just one of those things that, you know, there's Python stories all over the place. There's snake stories all over the place, but is anyone doing a squeezy Python story? No. So, yeah.
And now that you are going into writing and you know more about the industry, how do you feel like your writing has changed from the Rockstar book to Julius?
Oh, look, I don't know whether all authors do, but sometimes I look back at Rockstar, Movie Star, and Sports Star, and I go, oh God, they're terrible. Like they're not.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
It's not my best work, and that's absolutely true. It's not my best work, but you can see progressively. I think if you looked at, like, I've got 6 titles now, but if you looked at them progressively, you can see that there's been an evolution in my craft. You can see that I've, gotten better at rhyme, that I don't do near rhymes anymore, that I, understand beat better, and meter is obviously better. And I've just gotten better at what I do in terms of, the craft itself. Um, as far as, ideas, again, that comes down to inspiration. When inspiration strikes, it strikes. I might not write anything for another, I haven't written anything, I'd say I haven't written anything in a year. And I'm not likely to write anything until, a light bulb hits me or,
Yeah.
inspiration strikes. So it's just, that's how it is.
I often tell people that the kidlit industry is like the Hunger Games of the literature world. Like it really is a long haul.
Oh,
It
yeah.
you have to be in it for the long haul. And even people who've been in this industry for a very long time will tell you that you've got to pace yourself. You can't be like smashing out books and then feeling so rejected when you're getting all of the no's. How have you stayed positive and engaged and wanting to keep being in this industry?
This is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, right?
I love an unpopular opinion.
Oh,
You're speaking to the queen of unpopular
Oh,
opinion.
well, here's an unpopular opinion. I had made a decision, and I think this is probably why I've kind of fallen backwards into the industry. And it was because the very first book that I self-published, the whole point of actually even doing it was to kind of show my son that if you believe in a dream and you want to make it happen, then you have to work hard for it, right? So I had this opportunity to show him that all I ever wanted was to have a published book, right? So I went through that process and I did it. And at the end of it, I kind of went, you know what? If this is the only book I ever publish with my name on it, then that's it. That's fine, right? It's like I've done what I needed to do. I've shown him that this is possible, and that's enough for me. Um, the fact that I then, wrote a couple of other things, and to be totally honest, after Rockstar, Movie Star, and Sports Star, I did what everybody else does. You end up with imposter syndrome, and you start going, oh, my stuff is crap. No one's going to want to read it. No one's going to. And I think at the time we'd kind of gotten into COVID, and my agent had 6 manuscripts that she was potentially farming out, and nothing happened for 2.5 years. Like there was, no, and so you get disheartened by that, and you go, well, hang on a minute. Like I get that the publishing industry's kind of gone into lockdown, and nobody's taking on too much, but 2.5 years, like really? So that imposter syndrome really started to kick in. But I was also kind of going, oh well, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. You've got to just. There comes a point where you've just got to let it go, really, and give it up and
Absolutely.
go. The more that you are hyper focused on getting published, and the more that you are churning out material thinking that, oh, this one's going to be the next one, or this one's the one that publishers are going to love. If you're not writing for the sake of the love and the passion of it, then you're going to be churning out material that isn't to par, or isn't at a high standard. That's kind of just the way that I see it.
Absolutely. I've bought people Elsa dolls before and sent it to them and said, put this on your desk, and every time you press send on a manuscript submission, you sing to Elsa. You sing the Let It Go song, and you go, It is what it is. Moving on. What am I going to do now? Because you have no control over the outcome.
You don't. You have no control over the outcome. You've got no control over what the publisher is looking for. So it comes down to it's a luck. It's a little bit of luck, it's a little bit of magic, and a little bit of serendipity.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of everything. And I think, as you said before, it's part of the long game. And
Mm.
there's been people in the industry that have been trying for the last 10 years to be published and with no luck. And then every now and then a newbie comes along and all of a sudden their first book gets signed and you just kind of go, what? Like, there really is no rhyme or reason. It's just one of those things. It really,
Yeah. And people are so hard on themselves. And I think it's because of, I mean, we're not selling soft drink. We're not selling, something that's mass consumable as much as we would all love to say that we've got a book that's going to go viral or it's going to sell 1 million copies. Most of us don't get that. And it's a passion project and it's a story that's meaningful sometimes only to us. And then you've got to try and find somebody who gets it. And that's that, like you were saying, that's serendipity. That's not something that can, I mean, there are things obviously that you can do
yeah.
to give yourself more of a chance that you are going to be picked up by a traditional publisher. Now that you have had a look at both sides of traditional publishing and independent publishing, what are your thoughts to people who are deciding whether they should send their manuscript off on submission or just do it themselves?
I think the self-publishing journey is a difficult one. And I like, especially in the picture book arena. And the reality is the challenges with the self-publishing is that unless you're willing to invest a bucket load of money and getting a really good illustrator, a really good designer and getting it done properly, you're literally competing with everybody else who's out there in the picture book world, right? So whilst I understand that there's limitations in terms of budgets and stuff, going to an illustrator from Fiverr or that kind of thing will not give you a picture book that is the same quality or, is comparable to what's in the market. So I think the self-publishing journey is challenging. If I had my time over again, I probably would have done it the same way because naively, I learnt a lot during that process as far as the traditional publishing was concerned. So it then meant when I was traditionally published, I kind of knew the sort of basics of how it all worked from a contract point of view, royalties, those sorts of things, design, marketing, all that kind of stuff I kind of knew. But, if you can and you have the patience and you love the craft, I just keep saying, just stick with it, just keep submitting, just keep doing assessments, just keep doing it, because at some point someone's going to go, yep, got it, love it, let's do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Absolutely. Know exactly what you mean. And having it's a numbers game. So you can't just like the whole reason why it took me 10 years to get my very first manuscript published is I had one manuscript. I
Oh,
had one and I was sending it and waiting. And this is back in the day where you used to get a reply paid
yeah,
envelope in your own handwriting,
yeah,
which is just so devastating. Like, and if I knew then what I knew now, I would do it differently, but I wouldn't change it
no,
because I learned so much in that 10 years that put me in such good stead for when I finally did get a contract. But it's the long game. You got to be in it for the long game. So people who are watching and thinking, they're either trying and not getting published or people who are just starting out, what are your top tips, would you say, for submitting to traditional publishers?
I would absolutely say make sure that you've researched the publisher so that you know exactly what they're looking for. Like they will have kind of their back catalogue will give you an indication of the kinds of books that they publish. So, really, really research who your publisher or who you're submitting to. Make sure that you've absolutely honed your craft. Don't go and submit just a brain dump thinking that, yeah, this is great. Don't submit a synopsis without a story. don't go, I've got this really great idea, I'm just going to send them an email and that's going to, I'll write it after they've agreed to the synopsis. Don't do that because that doesn't happen. Um, but yeah, essentially just hone your craft. Just go back and keep playing, keep meeting people, become part of Facebook groups, get into critique groups, join, writers groups and things like that. Get around people that are actually doing it on the regular. Join a group that meets weekly if you can. Yeah, just keep doing it. Get assessments, go to conferences, do all of that sort of stuff. But also understand that part of the process of being an author and part of the process of becoming visible to publishers is part of your personal brand, right? So if you're an aspiring author and that's something that you really want to do, then you really need to start um, introducing yourself as an author to a wider audience other than just the industry. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you've got a social media, then you really need to start playing with introducing yourself behind the scenes, what inspires you, those kinds of things, getting in front of people.
I don't think people understand the importance of branding in our industry. And I think it's tough because branding didn't exist when before the internet, but when I started back in 2000 and still submitting, snail mail submissions, this is something that is new. Like, we're the first generation of authors, illustrators, and publishers who've had to figure out this social media stuff. But the branding of who you are and who you want to be is so key and essential. And people think it's an urban myth
Yeah.
that publishers will Google you to see what sort of online presence you have, but it's absolutely true, isn't it?
Absolutely true. It's absolutely true. I think one of the things that we forget as authors is that people won't remember necessarily the title of your book, especially if you've got lots of them, but they will remember your name. Like, I know of Michelle Worthington. I've known you for years. Like, we've never met, but I know your name, right? And the Andy Griffiths of the world. You know the Adrian Becks. You know an author by name. You don't necessarily know them by the title of their books, right? So, and I use this as an analogy when I do my Marketing Matters workshops, where I say to people, you have to think of yourself as the bookshop, right? And the books that you create are your products. So, from a consumer perspective, how is anyone going to know who the bookshop is and where the bookshop is located, much less where to buy the books, right? So, that's kind of the analogy that I give people. If you're not promoting the bookshop, people aren't going to be interested in the book. So, yeah, it kind of works that way. If you
Yeah,
don't have a personal brand and you're not out there and people don't actually get to understand and recognize your name, then it makes it really difficult for them to buy something when you've got something ready to sell. It's as simple as.
absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So, what's your job title these days?
Oh, my professional job title is managing editor, marketing manager for 5 Mile. But I'm also
That sounds fancy.
well, it does sound fancy. Fancy. Yeah, it's a fancy name for somebody who helps other people bring their books to life, really. Yeah.
Awesome. And are you hoping to, continue your publishing journey as well in the future?
Yeah. Look, like I said, I think um because that imposter syndrome had kind of kicked in with Larrikin House, it wasn't until sort of towards the end of COVID that I finally got uh Jimmy Bottoms. I
Mm.
finally got Jimmy Bottoms signed by 5 Mile. So that kind of, when that happens, you get that, oh my God, somebody else is actually interested in my work, which is really exciting, right? So then I think 2.5 weeks later or 3 weeks later, I got another call from my agent saying, oh, 5 Mile are interested in The Art of Making Friends and Julius Squeezer. And there was a third one, but I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. And that just lit a fire in me, right? It just made me go, oh my God, somebody else really likes my work, right? And as I said, because I'm like that, I kind of write sporadically. It then set a fire under me, and I wrote like 5 other manuscripts, which are now again sitting with an agent, and I'm kind of going, great. Now 5 Mile have taken my books. I've got 3 more. Like, we've just released Julius Squeezer, and I've got four more with them that are coming out over the next, 18 to 24 months. But
Amazing.
I'm at that stage again where I'm kind of going, oh, great, there's another six sitting with the agent. Maybe my work's not that good and nobody else is going to sign it. So we all go through that. It's like a
Yes.
loop, really, isn't it?
Every time. I think it happens when it's a long time between wins.
Yeah.
Because I know, for me, I was like desperate to get a book out every year. Like that's always been my goal, is to have a book published every single year. And it's just not sustainable and it's not always possible. And the first time it didn't happen, I was like, that's it. I'm done. Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. Think I'll go eat worms,
Oh my God. It's it's true though, but I think it's because we're creative by nature, right? So we're intrinsically emotional people. Yeah. So, and I've again, it's one of those things, you put your work in front of somebody and you're asking them to love it, right? And it's like you're bearing your soul. And so many people take that so personally. And I get it, because you put your blood and your sweat and your tears into producing, this beautiful manuscript, and you're farming it out to all of these people. It's like, please love it, please love it, please love it. And, rejection after rejection after rejection, it's disheartening. And I totally get it. But I've said it before, like in this industry, you have to learn to have thick skin. You have to learn that rejections aren't personal. There's all sorts of reasons why your manuscript may not be accepted. It might be that it's not commercially viable. It might mean that it doesn't necessarily fit the publisher's list at any given moment. It might mean that you need to go and hone your craft and it's not written well. There's all sorts of reasons why your manuscript isn't hitting the mark. And if it's not hitting the mark repeatedly, if you're submitting the same manuscript to multiple publishers and it's not hitting the mark for anyone, then the you have to look at what you've written, and you have to look at it constructively and say, okay, maybe this isn't the right one. Maybe I should go back to the drawing board and come up with some other concepts and write other things. You can't take things personally. You just
No,
can't.
not at all. And what are your thoughts on having your work edited before you send it off to a publisher?
Absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt. I would not recommend that anyone sends anything to a publisher without it being edited first, especially if it's rhyme and meter. And, the other thing with rhyme and meter, and I always say this to people, is, when you've got an opportunity to give your manuscript to multiple people and have them read it out loud to you, especially if it's rhyme and meter, because one of those things with rhyme and meter is the way that you read it in your head is very different to the way someone else will read it out loud. So when you give someone your manuscript and they're reading it out loud, you'll be able to identify really quickly where they're putting emphasis on which words, where they're tripping over on the meter, if the rhyme is slightly out. So it's really important that you get multiple people to read your manuscripts out loud to you.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree. We're there, sister. We're there.
Absolutely.
Now, I could talk to you all day, but for anyone watching who would like to get in contact with you, maybe they have questions that we haven't covered today, what would be the best way that they could get in contact with you?
They can always reach out to me via Instagram. So you can DM me, or my email address is in my link on Instagram. So by all means, I'm always open to chatting to people, always open to brainstorming or, running ideas by people. Just reach out.
And maybe one day we might even catch up and have coffee in
Wow. Where are you in Perth?
Brisbane.
Well, you're in Brisbane. Yeah, well, I'm in Melbourne. Do you ever come down to Melbourne? Are you going to come for Kidlit Fit or...
I will come just for coffee.
All
That's
right,
how
you're on.
important you are, multi-hyphenate, Mary.
Ah, multi-hyphen. I never heard that term before. You've enlightened me today. I've learned something new today.
Oh, well, I always learn something new when I chat to you. So thank you so much for taking the time. You've given everybody so much information today. And I love speaking with you, and I love watching you go from strength to strength. And I can't wait to see these new books that are coming out. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to finally meet you. Like I said, it's been one of those things where you feel like, you know someone for a really long time. So finally meeting you face to face has actually been really lovely. So thank you so much for having me.
No worries, and I'll see you next time I'm in Melbourne.
Absolutely. You call me. You know me now. You know where to
I
find me.
I know how to now you're in trouble. Know how to find you. But thank you so much everyone for watching another episode of Ask the Arts. If you want to get in contact with Mary, I will put her link to her Instagram, and in there you'll be able to find her email address. Please listen really carefully to the amazing information that she's given you today. She has been doing this for a very long time. She's worked both independent published and with large major traditional publishers. She knows what she's talking about. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and we will see you again on Ask the Arts.